I'm Geoff Cutmore. It is Friday, the 21st of March. You are watching Squawk Box on CNBC Europe, 8 o'clock in Paris and Frankfurt. A very warm welcome this morning to our viewers who join us in North America, Europe and Asia. Let's bring you up to date here. The battle for Iraq has moved to the country's second largest city, Basra. Reports that Allied aircraft have attacked the city in the south of the country. According to the latest, a unit of US Marines was halted by anti-tank missiles and small arms fire after crossing into Iraq. They're thought to have called in artillery support. And for latest on the rest of the world news stories this morning and continued reaction to what is happening in Iraq, let's get to Serena in the newsroom. Serena.
Thanks, Geoff. Good morning, everyone. And the White House has said that Turkey will not receive a $30 billion economic aid package, which the U.S. had offered in return for cooperation ahead of war. Washington confirmed that the package is, quote, not on the table and will not be on the table. Earlier, Ankara's parliament had voted to allow America the use of its airspace for the conflict, but fell short of America's original request to deploy 62,000 of its troops on the Turkey-Iraq border. The French Interior Ministry has reported that traces of the deadly poison ricin have been found in the Gare de Lyon railway station in Paris. Reports say that 2 small flasks containing traces of the poison were discovered in a left luggage depot at the mainline railway station, which serves the south of France. That brings you up to date with the very latest on the world news front. Geoff.
Serena, thanks very much for that. As is our remit here on CNBC, of course, we will be keeping you across the latest business news developments, any corporate releases, and also we'll be having a good hard look at how the markets trade. Yesterday was a very interesting day. We will not lose sight, though, of the biggest story that is taking place. We have access to MSNBC. We will be showing this throughout the show to make sure that you have the latest details and are kept up to date with the pictures from this unfolding drama in the Middle East. Let's just bring you up to date with a news flash we're getting from the Kuwait National Guard. They are now reporting 15 oil wells are alight in the south of Iraq. As we get more details, obviously we'll bring you up to date with those. Guy Monson is our guest host this morning. Guy is with us for the next 2 hours to help us give analysis on how the markets are dealing with what is going on in the Middle East. Guy is a partner at Saracen Investment Management. A very good morning to you, Guy.
Very good morning.
Thank you very much for being with us this morning here on Squawk Box. Okay, lots of consequences from the ongoing activities in the Gulf. Let's get to Guy Johnson out on our markets desk and talk a little bit about the consequences for the airline sector. Guy.
Well, airline and the aerospace sector, Geoff, obviously coming under intense pressure. When you look at the aerospace sector, you've obviously got to divide it between the military and the civil, though many companies obviously focus on both. Louisa, why don't you kick off and talk about the aviation side of things?
Yeah, Guy, we're just getting news in right now on KLM Royal Dutch Airlines, and they're saying that they've suspended more flights to the Middle East and that they've reduced the number of connections to other regions also due to the war in Iraq, and that has led to lower demand than in turn. KLM, they've said that after the flight reductions, the capacity will be 7% lower than last year, and they're just yet one of the numerous airlines that have cut back in capacity due to a lower demand from the passenger side. Brent having fallen by 14.6%, and NYMEX, Guy, also off quite a lot. And you may know that 1 cent rise in a gallon of jet fuel per year is equal to $600 million in costs, and of course that's vice versa. Then also when we're looking at falling fuel prices.
Takes quite a lot to run an aeroplane.
It does.
And that's the second biggest cost, isn't it, associated with that?
It
second
is,
to
exactly.
Wages.
Wages first,
so,
and then
and
the
it's
cost.
probably the most volatile. They can fix wages for quite a long period of time. They obviously have to hedge against the movements in the oil price, but that obviously becomes very expensive over a long period of time as well.
Let's get you an update now. MSNBC provides the latest for us.
We're going to get you caught up in the latest headlines. This is an Operation Iraqi Freedom, as we are doing every quarter hour for you round the clock. Beginning with this, U.S.-led forces continue their ground assault from Kuwait into Iraq after a series of artillery barrages. British troops have stormed the Al-Awa Peninsula at the head of the Persian Gulf. That is a key route for oil tanker traffic. You just heard my colleague, NBC's Forrest Sawyer, telling us that it is believed those British troops have now taken control of the Al-Awa Peninsula. Meanwhile, huge explosions explosions, they are heard near the southern Iraqi city of Basra. U.S. officials are saying that intelligence strongly indicates that Saddam was still inside the bunker. Possibly he was injured. All of this when that bunker was hit on Wednesday night. And the Washington Post is reporting that U.S. officials knew that Saddam was making taped statements, all in anticipation of Wednesday's deadline. Pentagon officials say no hostile fire involved in the crash of a U.S. Marine helicopter, much like the one you're going to see shortly on your screen. It was a CH-46 Sea Knight. It went down in Kuwait, killing all 16 aboard. We're told there were 4 Americans believed to be Marines, also 12 British paratroopers, we believe. The Sea Knight was assigned to the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force.
We're going to talk a little bit about the strategic situation now. MSNBC, our sister station, has brought us up to date with exactly what is happening on the ground in Iraq. I think useful at this point to talk to someone who has military experience and also now is able to perhaps look from some distance at the whole scene. Philip Wilkinson is a senior research fellow at King's College. He is ex-Special Forces. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Nice to have you with us. As you see the ground war unfolding at this stage, what do you think the overall strategy is from the Pentagon? Because Donald Rumsfeld kept telling us it was going to be blitzkrieg style, big, sharp, possibly a short action that would be very violent in its nature. It seems somewhat different.
I think what we are seeing now is the ability to inject tactical pauses in the operation to allow for the surrender of the Iraqi forces.
Guy, how does this translate for markets? Here we are, we've talked a lot about the wall of worry over recent years. We seem to be climbing another one about the headlines that are coming out from Iraq at the moment. The markets are taking it in their stride, though.
We have a stock market historian later on to add detail to this, but my basic research shows that in general, following a big event such as a war, such as a Cuban Missile Crisis, such even as the first oil crisis, you tend to get a positive reaction in global equity markets. On average, from my figures, you get after, say, 3 weeks, a 5% move over the last 50 years. After 3 months, about an 8 or 9% move, and on average a 16% increase in equity markets over the 10 months following the beginning of a crisis.
Just a couple of things that I want to tell you about. We are getting a little bit more news about fires in southern Iraq at oil fields. There are currently reports coming in from the UK that there are several oil well heads on fire in southern Iraq and that British troops are moving towards them. The Kirkuk oil fields may have been secured by US forces. The BBC is quoting intelligence sources. We will get to Jessica Yellin in just a few minutes, who will come to us from Washington. Jessica is NBC's correspondent. She will come to us from the NBC Bureau in Washington. Hopefully we will get an update on the latest situation from the heart of the US government. Let's get out to Guy Johnson here on the markets desk. Let's bring in our other reporters from around Europe. John Holland joins us from Frankfurt. Shellie Karabell live from Paris. I think interesting to have a look at how the public are reacting around Europe to what is going on in the Middle East and how the newspapers are reflecting that. Guy, let's come to you first.
Well, the UK coverage is certainly very much focused on the war at the moment. The UK public opinion debates obviously continues to rage strongly. Tony Blair delivering his address last night saying we have a deeply divided country, but we must now pull together. The UK papers pick up on what has been happening out in the war. Mass destruction is what is called by the Mirror this morning, with a picture across the front and the back cover, a continuous picture showing some of the destruction that has been taking place. In terms of the broadsheets, a war beyond all other wars is the title from the Times. If we come back to the other tabloids, we're talking about battle for Basra. Obviously, that is the first target that many people are talking about here. Let's find out exactly how the other countries are reporting events at the moment. Let's start out in Paris with Shellie Karabell. Shellie, how are the papers reporting the differing events that we've seen, both from the Middle East and here in Europe?
It's interesting to see the same picture. This is Le Figaro.
Saddam is target number 1, it says. That same picture is on Libération, which is, the Figaro tends to be right-leaning. This is left-leaning. The Marines in Iraq, but it's the same photograph. We're seeing a lot of coverage, of course, of the war events, calling it an Anglo-Saxon or British-American, an Anglo-American offensive commencing.
Well, Guy, over here in Frankfurt, we've got a bit of a cross-section of papers this morning. The Handelsblatt here reporting Baghdad under fire here. Basically, the Handelsblatt is saying, this is from our colleague Tom Knipp, Bush may well win the war. He says he wants to make the world a safer place, but Handelsblatt actually doubts that the world will be a safer place, as it will encourage Islamic extremism. Back to you.
Thank you, John. Well, I'm just looking at the Scandinavian newspaper sites on the internet, and it seems that there's quite a lot of talk regarding the protests that have been against the war from the locals around the world. Really, we've seen various protests in the U.S. We've also seen various protests around in Europe, and they are highlighting this. There's also a bit of talk about how Bush actually gave a tax for the orders 12 hours before the actual deadline. So, in effect, he breached his own promise to give 48 hours and gave 36 hours instead. And finally, also, there is some talk about Saddam threatening with suicide bombs. This is according to one of the very large tabloids in Scandinavia. But that, of course, is also just one of the widespread rumors that is out in the marketplace, Guy, about what Saddam could do.
Certainly, and that is obviously the great fear being reflected in many of the papers. It is interesting to see, though, that we've got the notes, the tone from Paris and Frankfurt. The overall sentiment there continuing that this is an Anglo-Saxon war. So different interpretations being placed around the European papers this morning. Thank you, Shellie Karabell. Thank you, John Holland. Obviously, thank you, Louisa. And we will be back with the market opens fairly soon. But, Geoff, back to you. All
right, Guy, thanks very much for that. Let's get out to Washington now. Jessica Yellin joins us once again, NBC's correspondent in Washington. Nice to have you back with us on CNBC Europe. Jessica, what news this morning from the White House?
The White House right now has been saying that they feel so far reports from the battlefield are encouraging. They have been cautious in the comments they make publicly, but so far expressed pleasure with the way the war has gone so far.
Yeah, let's start getting some details about how these markets are likely to open here in Europe. We've just gone past the hour. The European markets will be opening as we speak. Ireland up into positive territory already. The European markets will gradually filter through over the next 10 or 20 seconds. We're starting to see Denmark already up into positive territory. The CAC Heron, the ZDAX, the FTSE 100. It will take a couple of minutes for these trades to start come through. There you go, Germany up into positive territory. We're trading positively in Frankfurt already this morning. Other markets are expected to open higher, but it is likely to be a cautious session. Obviously, many people will be watching the headlines, trying to determine exactly what it means for their trades when it comes to the war. London now open, up just a fraction. It finished absolutely flat yesterday. An indication really of just the level of nervousness of these markets, just an absolutely neutral position being established. The ZDAX now tipping down just a fraction, down around 0.4%. Let's get to the CAC Heron trade. At the moment, we are up some 1% at the moment. Let's find out exactly what is happening. Shellie Karabell, our Paris bureau chief, as you can see behind me, ready and standing by, watching the trades. Shellie, how does it look?
It looks very green, actually, Guy. We're up 26 points, and that's over 1%, 28.21. We're looking for support at 27.44.
Shellie, thanks very much indeed. Let's get out to Frankfurt now, where the market is trading up just 0.2%. Flattish open. Dan Scott is standing by in Frankfurt to give us the latest details. Dan, what's moving the market this morning, or is it just nervousness, just waiting to see what happens in the war?
You know, there's a lot of volatility right now, and it's not all too surprising for today's session, not just because of the war on Iraq that we're experiencing right now, and of course the nerves that puts investors on, especially on development of how oil prices are going to progress, but also because today is a day where we have a triple witch for these markets. That means index futures, index options, and also individual stock options will all expire by the end of today's trading session, and so that is also going to put some extra volatility into these markets. Back to you.
Dan, thanks very much indeed. A volatile session in Frankfurt, likely to be again a volatile session over in London. The market just finishing in positive territory yesterday, but only just. Oils were a big feature. Insurance stocks continue to be so. Let's find out what's going on in London. Steve Sedgwick is standing by to give us the details from the British capital.
Guy, yeah, the London market this morning is opening slightly stronger than we expected, actually. We're up around about 25 points, once again trying to get above that key 3,800 level. It's a level we've tried to challenge a couple of times this week and haven't managed to get over as of yet. We're currently trading at 37.90. But Dan, talking about triple witching over in Germany, certainly the biggest feature non-Iraq related for the London market today will be the double witching. We haven't got equity options expiry. We had that one on Wednesday. So we've got index options and index futures expiring today between 10:10 and 10:30 GMT.
Let's try and fill in some of the other gaps and figure out exactly what's going on. Louisa is standing by for that.
Thank you, Guy. Let me just point out on the equity side of things, we do also have the futures expiry, of course, happening today in a number of markets. So that's something to watch out for as well, and something that will affect our markets and trading. Brent is now open out of London, trading up by 0.8% at 25.70. You can just see it bleeping upward just slightly. 8.53 is where NYMEX stands. If we can just very briefly show you this NYMEX chart. No. All right, let's go back to Geoff.
All right, Louisa, thanks very much for that. We'll do the NYMEX chart in just a moment or two. We've got some fresh pictures that we need to bring you here from MSNBC. These are shots of Iraqis in southern Iraq. We presume they are surrendering to Allied forces.
We do not know exactly where this surrendering is taking place, but as you can see, they have all put their hands on top of their heads to make sure they are not able to reach for any sort of armor, any sort of equipment they might have on them.